Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Tuesday, April the 8th. And as we like to do once a week, we'll be chatting with our good friend Bill Katz, the editor of Urgent Agenda. Bill, welcome. Well, were you last night, Bill? Did you join the people at Grand Central who decided to shut down the station, Bill?
No, I couldn't make it. I couldn't make it. I decided to go bowling instead. Uh, but what happened there was very dangerous.
Yes,
This was rush hour, and people are rushing into the terminal to get their trains home.
sure.
And this group of intellectuals, who had nothing better to do with their time, basically shut the station down. And
Right.
I use Grand Central all the time. Members of my family do, and I thought of myself in that situation where you're trapped. Now, fortunately, the police did a good job. Grand Central security people did a good job, and they cleared it pretty fast. But this business that you can have, I mean, as that began to build, the police should have acted immediately and should have had the authority to act immediately to just arrest these people if they weren't going to move along.
Right.
And I think that's coming. You see it now in universities where extra authority is being given to the campus police and to local authorities to act with great haste if there's really a danger. And I think they're going to be used a lot.
Well, I hope so. I hope so because aside from the fact that this is dangerous, you're making life difficult for well-meaning people who just
And
want to get home.
that's exactly right.
I mean, so if you're going to protest like this, it just amazes me. They never go to a park anymore,
No, no, they would no. I think it was a little too chilly.
right?
That's what the problem was. As the weather gets better here in New York, which will be early May or so, I think you'll see some of them in the park. I think some of them will congregate as peaceful protesters and predictors of destiny outside university gates.
Right.
Um, I suspect that they will shut down some intersections and especially bridges, and that's very, very dangerous. If
Right.
they shut down a bridge in the center, it not only jams traffic, it makes it impossible for emergency vehicles to go through.
And I think that happened somewhere
It
where an
did, yeah.
ambulance couldn't go through. But I just think that, and then I heard something that they were protesting down some street and people were throwing things from the balconies. Did you
Yes,
hear about that?
yes, yes. They did get a greeting. I'm sure that it was a very warm and kind greeting because of their commitment to democracy. But I was enraged because we do use that terminal, so I know
Right.
how dangerous it could be if it was shut down. You could have a medical emergency
Oh,
with
all kinds of problems.
yes,
I
yes,
mean, it's extremely dangerous. I mean, it's the kind of thing that now you say the police did a good job. I didn't hear that part. I didn't hear much about how it was handled. All I heard was that it happened. So I'm glad that the police came in. See, I think what they should do in a situation like that is, uh, and it reminds me a little bit about something that happened at the University of Texas earlier when they started these things about 6 months ago or whatever. That the governor said anybody's going to be arrested, and if you're a student, you're going to be if you're here on a student visa, you're going to be turned over to ICE.
yes,
And I think the minute that word gets out that this is not a or this is an activity that could get you deported, I have a feeling that's going to have the same impact on this group as those airplanes going to El Salvador is going to have on these other criminals.
yes.
I
I
mean,
hope
look,
so.
that prison down there in El Salvador is not exactly where you want to spend some time.
No, no, and that's going to come up, because at least theoretically, the laws of the United States cannot be used to subject anyone, including a
Right.
prisoner, to that kind of torture and behavior. And I think those are good laws. But you'll find somebody else somewhere else to put them. I
Yeah.
mean, if they can't
Well,
be
now a
deported,
friend of mine, Bill, a friend of mine was telling me, a friend of mine from El Salvador was telling me that this prison gets a bit of a bum rap. And I know that sounds kind of crazy, but he said,
yeah,
look, the images that go out on international television, and especially American television, they only show the, when the prisoners are sitting down and being pushed around by the guards. But during the day, they apparently keep them busy working. And it's not, I mean, it's not a place anybody would want to be,
No.
but it's not like, it's not like, what was the Count of Monte Cristo, where he was in that prison all
Yes.
by, it's not like that either. And so I'm, I understand we may have a problem with it at some point, particularly if they send somebody down there that shouldn't be. But the idea that you're thinking about having to spend your time down there, that might have an impact on your behavior, Bill.
It might. Look, the whole thing is bad all around. Even, in Grand Central, where they photograph people, they the television cameras are there. They're photographing everybody in the station. I mean, think of a man cheating on his wife. you know, I mean, it's not fair. It's but I should point out they're photographing not only the demonstrators but the general public, people who
Right.
do not wish to be photographed,
Sure.
and perhaps for some very legitimate reason.
Yeah.
Or and it is you these things have to be nipped in the bud.
Right.
Now they're trying. I know at Columbia, I don't know if their heart is in it, but they are trying to improve the police situation, where the Columbia police can take much stronger action in the event a demonstration reaches the point where it endangers people. And I don't know how it's going to work or if it's going to work, but I suspect that during the summer months we're going to see a lot more demonstrating in areas where the weather is warm but there's enough shade to so the demonstrators are comfortable. And of course, remember they're gearing up for next year, which
Right.
is the midterm, and a very critical midterm. And we should point out that the campaigns for the midterm are going to begin in a few months. In
Right.
September, you're going to start seeing the nomination campaigns. This could be very bitter, very angry, and I think we better get our act together before then.
Oh, sure. And there also there's a couple of governor's races, I believe, in the fall.
Yeah,
Virginia and New Jersey always have a governor's election right after the presidential election. I don't know why it works that way, but they're
yeah,
always like the next year after the presidential election. But I just think that as a citizen, you're entitled to having a peaceful train station.
that's right. A peaceful and private
Yes.
station,
Yeah. You
and you
don't
should.
have to, I mean, if you go to a train station, you shouldn't expect a bunch of people blocking the gates and making your life miserable. I mean,
Yes,
I think of, and maybe I think this way because I have small grandchildren, but I think of, some lady there with some small kids. I mean, think of how dangerous that could be for those kids and
of
for
course,
everybody. Yeah.
and frightening also.
And frightening. It's the kind of
Because
thing that should not be allowed.
that's right. They're screaming, making tremendous amounts of noise, which itself is a hazard, and they could start to riot, and that is always something that the police have to worry about.
Yeah, well, they're just going to have more security at these places, I guess.
I think so.
But where was the governor? Was she involved at all, or did
No,
she
I think
say?
she was probably hiding under her desk.
Well, maybe
Uh,
so, because this would be a great opportunity for a governor. Did Andrew Cuomo say anything? He's running for mayor. Did he say that he never put up with something like this?
I don't think so. No, he's worried about, he's running as a Democrat,
Right,
and
right.
he's running about in a party where these people have great representation. I mean, this is the base of much of the Democratic Party, of these
That's it.
crazies.
That's
That's
it. And that's why, Bill, that's why the party's in such disarray,
absolutely.
because of these people. You're exactly right. These are the people who are going to probably be supporting AOC for U.S. Senate. And I understand that a poll came out that she's doing fairly well against Schumer.
That she would defeat him.
She would defeat him. Okay.
Yes. However, first of all, that poll it was only among the Democrats. We don't know. Of course, the primary would be only Democrats, but the campaign hasn't begun yet. If she runs against Schumer, he's going to come down on her like a ton of bricks. I mean, you can just see the ads. That here this is a woman who has it all. She
Right,
wants to defund the police. She
right,
wants
right,
to end help to Israel. She loves criminals. Why? Just look at the things she said,
right.
and that could be your United States senator. And I think she's very vulnerable. The only place she really has in New York State any popularity is within her own district,
Right.
and that's
Right.
not enough to elect somebody.
No, I
I
don't think you're. I think you're right, Bill. I don't think she would beat him once all of the forces come into play. But she's got him pretty scared. I'll tell you that right now,
Well,
because
because they let into the Democratic Party people who should never have been let into the
that's
Democratic
right.
Party.
Right.
They had this problem in the 1960s as well, and handled it, reasonably well. But once this kind of thing starts, you don't know where it's going to stop, and it does have an effect on elections.
Absolutely. This is the image people have,
That's right.
and that's the problem. People see the Democrat Party and they see her face,
Yes.
and that's not a good combination. Well, the tariffs have been shaking things up a little bit. All the talk
Yeah.
about tariffs and the stock market, and let me give you my opinion about the tariffs bill. In a perfect world, I'm a free market person, but the world we live in, you have American cars cannot be sold or very difficult to sell, I should say, in South Korea and Japan and Europe and other places. So it seems to me only fair that there should be equal conditions. I mean, I don't understand why we cannot sell. I learned about this today that we cannot sell Texas beef in Australia, but they can sell their beef here.
Yes.
That's the kind of thing that to me it doesn't make any sense. And I'm a free trader. I believe in free markets. I don't like
Yes.
tariffs, but I want to be fair too, Bill.
That's exactly right. No, we have lost so much of our industry. By industry, I mean people who make things. Uh, and I remember when this was happening. Well, some of the excuses were, well, we're moving from a manufacturing to a service economy. How much service do you need? I mean, do you want to have an assembly line to turn out more accountants? It's
Well, that seems to be what our universities are doing.
That's exactly right. Yeah. But I think most people now realize that countries that become great in part because they make things
Right.
and they make things that other people need.
Well, that's it. And I think there's also a national security component to all of this. I mean, we learned that during COVID, when the Chinese are the ones who make our medicine, I'm sorry, to me that's a little bit too risky.
Oh,
And
absolutely. Yeah.
and when the only place that makes chips is Taiwan, that's too risky for me too, Bill, especially since I need a chip to be talking to you right now.
Absolutely. And Taiwan used to have almost a complete monopoly on the making of chips. Now we are building some factories
Right.
in the United States that will make chips, but we are very far down in our manufacturing. We have only two shipyards in America that can build aircraft carriers. The Navy is hard put to find companies that can build other ships. We had just let ourselves go right down the drain, and so obviously somebody made money on it, and they yelled for free trade. But we have a workforce that is no longer trained in building things. I don't know how many machinists we need in the country, but it's plenty. So this is the beginning of a journey that's going to last a long time, and we had better win that journey and win back our industrial economy, or we're going to be in very bad shape, especially if war breaks out.
Well, that's it. And so I'm concerned about the national security. Now, uh, I suppose there are some things that maybe will never come back. Maybe we can make cheaper tennis shoes somewhere else, or cheaper jeans somewhere else. I mean, everything used to be made in South Carolina, if I remember, North
Yeah.
Carolina. That used to be the textile section
One,
of the United
oh
States.
yes, one of them. Yeah.
Yeah, one of them. There are others, I'm sure, but those two come to mind because I had a couple of friends who went to work in that business, and that's where they ended up. Uh, but I just think that we have got to be better prepared for China, and one of my concerns is that they're building a navy, and we're not.
That's it. Look. Our Navy is still right now
Sure,
superior to theirs. However, theirs is they are building in quantity.
right,
It may not be great quality, or certainly not as great as ours in terms of quality yet, but at some point it will be. They're improving their training, they're improving their readiness, and their navy will be larger than ours and could dominate the Western Pacific, which would be absolutely catastrophic to the United States.
right. And the Chinese are not thinking about 2025. They're thinking about 2050. And
That's right.
that's the one thing I give Trump a lot of credit for. That credit, I mean, Trump is looking 20 or 25 years down the road, whether it's Greenland or whether it's China. Because, for example, in Greenland, a lot of people don't know the importance of that or don't want to accept it. And I said, look, I don't care about Greenland either. I just don't want the Chinese running it.
That's right.
And pretty soon, that's what's if we don't get in there, the Chinese will.
Yes, that's very, very important. The area around Greenland is very critical to our national security, as it was in World War II. I mean, a submarine force, and the Russians have a submarine force, can block that area pretty badly. Once again, as happened in World War II. And we need the oceans. We need the oceans to transport most of the goods that are necessary should there be a crisis in Europe.
Right.
And I don't think it was handled very well by the incoming Trump administration, because he never mentioned it during the campaign, and then all of a sudden we're talking about Greenland and some other places around the world that he never mentioned, and talking about them being critical to our national security. I think the handling of it wasn't quite as good as it should have been. And I think we also have to recognize that in the Pacific, many people forget that this is a Pacific country as well as an Atlantic country. But in the Pacific, ships count. And it's a big ocean there, and you better control it. And the only way to control it is with ships and
Right.
submarines.
Bill, you talk about a big ocean, and the other day I happened to be looking at this promotional video of a flight from San Francisco to New Zealand, and they said the flight was like 15 hours over the ocean.
Yeah.
That is when you realize how big that ocean is.
Yes.
When you look at that video and you realize that this flight, and you look out the window, and all you see is water for 15 hours, and
That's
and that just points out what you're saying, how immense that ocean is, and how important is that somebody has a Pacific fleet, and I hope it's us, not the Chinese.
Yeah, well, that's it. Some of these things are fundamental. When they talk about the Pacific, they start mentioning names that we World War II nuts know by heart. Including Okinawa and the Philippines. The
Mm-hmm.
Philippines are threatened. Australia is threatened, and Australia doesn't have much defense.
No.
And our Chinese friends are moving now into the Solomon Islands, where we fought in World War II, and other places, New Zealand, important, and also if you get down to below the Asian landmass, you have the entryway into the Indian Ocean,
Right.
and very, very critical to us. So even though this is a much more modern era technically, with nuclear weapons and biological weapons and all kinds of weapons, the fundamentals of war still preside. We
That's
we
right.
have we have to be able to control these areas.
Well, even if you want to drop, I mean, for example, we have an unbelievable Air Force, of course, but even if you wanted to use the Air Force in the Pacific, you still need a place to land
That's right.
to refill it, because even I don't think a B-52 can go, or one of these B-2s or whatever. I guess you can refill them in the air, I know, but
Yeah.
you may still need places to stop on the way to wherever you're going to go. So I agree. I mean, I think we need to look ahead to 2050, and that's one thing I like about Trump. I think he does think that way. That
Yes.
he is thinking about China, not right now, but down the road. And I think Greenland is a good example. The Panama Canal is another good example of Trump realizing that you need these places. We haven't really, just because we don't want to fight a war, it doesn't mean you don't prepare for one or get ready for one, Bill.
Well, the idea is to prevent the war by being ready for it. You know,
Right.
it was George Washington who originally said, "If you want peace, prepare for war."
That's it. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Well, let me bring up another interesting, talking about war, another important topic of national security, and that is two things that happened this week. Maybe it's a coincidence. We're talking to Iran, and the prime minister of Israel was in town for a very quick visit. I mean, it was not even a day long. And I'm wondering if they were talking about Iran, Bill.
There's no doubt they were talking about
Yeah.
Iran, and he was in town. His visit was disappointing. If you look at the press today, the Israeli press, apparently the Israelis felt they were treated badly by the president, which is rare because he's the most pro-Israel president we've ever had. He might have been in a bad mood, but his performance during the meeting, especially on television, was weird at times.
Mm.
I mean, he seemed to be demeaning Netanyahu. He seemed to be demeaning Israel. And there were messages out of the White House, you know, these discreet messages that the president likes the president of Turkey. There have also been some news stories leaked that there is a rather substantial Iranian lobby that is operating in Washington and having its effect on the Trump administration.
Hmm. That's interesting. I was not familiar with that story because, as you say, Trump has always been so pro-Israel.
Yes, well, I'm sure he still is, but he did not apparently tell the Israeli prime minister beforehand that he was going to open talks with Iran,
Oh, okay.
and that's not the way friends work with friends. And if it gets to the point where we begin to move closer to Iran, which is exactly what people like Barack Obama want, and other influential individuals, then I think you're going to see some very substantial friction and possibly an unintended war in the Middle East.
Yes. One of the things, Bill, I keep hearing about, we're talking to Iran and the things could be bad if they don't go along with us. Does this remind you of Iraq in 2002, or am I just dreaming?
No, you're not dreaming at all. The
Because I
war.
hear the same language. I mean, I hear the language that, you know, w- with Iraq, we didn't want them to get WMDs. Now, supposedly they had them,
Yes,
but we didn't want them to, I guess, use them again or to get them. And we were giving them ultimatums. And here we seem to be doing the same thing. And
exactly.
I don't know if the country is prepared for, I guess, a massive air attack on Iran, Bill.
Well, there has been discussion that there are two ways to get rid of the Iranian nuclear program, which is the main issue right now. That they're very close to being able to bring an atomic bomb to fruition within a matter of weeks. And they're also building intercontinental ballistic missiles that can strike the United States and Europe, and they won't stop. They That agreement that was signed in 2015 by Barack Obama, which was supposed to slow their nuclear program, was a fraud. It was an absolutely outrageous fraud. It had more holes than Swiss cheese. And if you remember, when Obama reached the agreement with Iran, that he couldn't present it to the Senate as a treaty because he didn't have any support for it.
Right.
And
Including Senator Schumer.
including Senator Schumer. Absolutely. Now you have a situation where Iran, thanks to the gratuitous actions of the Biden administration, has plenty of money that it didn't have before. I mean, I don't know how we could have done things that put so many billions of dollars into the hands of an enemy, but we did do it. And it was because Biden was in power and the Democratic Party was very weak toward the Iranian issue. But it is now nuclear. I mean, it's very clear that within a matter of weeks they could put a nuclear force together that could do devastating damage.
And to Israel would be very concerned about
Oh,
that.
of
And I
course,
guarantee
yes.
you they're not going to wait around.
No, they won't. They
I
won't.
mean, they'll do whatever they can do, which is substantial, but obviously not as much as we can do. But I wonder if they had that conversation, the prime minister and the president, because, if I'm the prime minister of Israel, I fear that weapon even more than the United States, Bill.
Oh yes, and I think that Trump's behavior toward Netanyahu is not going to help our cause very much because other countries look for any daylight between the United States and Israel, and they feel they can take advantage of it.
Right.
And I mean, yes, Trump talks tough at times that if they do not agree to dismantle their program quickly, we may have to take military action. Well, if he's going to threaten it and then not do it, which is what happened with Obama and Syria, we're going to be in big trouble.
Yeah.
Then that's the time they start calling us a paper tiger.
Right.
I mean, you've got to carry out your threats, and you've got to achieve your objective. Achieving the objective of wiping out their military program, or I'm sorry, their nuclear program, without military action is extremely difficult. You can have an agreement, but that agreement would be an inspection agreement. It could be certified. You know, it was Reagan quoting the old Russian proverb, "Trust but verify." You could have an agreement like that, but Iran is a very proud country, and the mullahs are very tough. I don't know if they would go along with anything like that. It's been pointed out what you have to do is get in there and destroy their weapons manufacturing. You can't just leave it up to them to assert that they're doing it, although that's what the Democrats would say. And I don't see which way this can go. I mean, I don't see how this can end well.
No, that's why, when I hear some of the language, that's why I mentioned that it reminded me of Iran in 2002, that war was inevitable. At least I thought it was in 2002. And I'm beginning to think here that an attack is inevitable as well. Well, Bill, one more topic this week, and this is, I think, a pretty big one, and that is President Biden and his condition, physical or cognitive, whatever they call it, condition, where it's now becoming more and more clear that he wasn't really up to it. And you have now, it's kind of become fashionable now. Everybody wants to write a book about it.
And everyone will.
Everybody will. So everybody's got a book now coming out to tell us what they chose not to tell us when it was really important to tell us.
Well,
but anyway, so my point is this: you have this new book out, these two reporters who wrote the book, and it seemed like they were on every show. I mean, my gosh, they've been on Dallas radio like 6 times, different shows, and across the country. And that's what you do, I guess, when you're promoting a book. But here's my question, though, Bill. The 25th Amendment was created for this purpose, for when having to replace a president who either had a disability or whatever and couldn't function.
That's right.
But in this case, it didn't work. And it didn't work because nobody chose to ignite it. And I'm beginning to wonder if maybe, I mean, that's really my question is maybe do we need to take a look at that amendment and come up with a different way of, igniting it, if that's the right word?
Yes.
Because obviously the vice president and the cabinet didn't do it.
No.
So maybe an act of Congress or congressional, non-binding, I'm saying it's non-binding congressional resolution, but at least it puts the topic on the front page, Bill.
Yes, and another institution that didn't do the job was the American press.
Well, yes,
they became part of the problem, and they want to be called a profession.
Right.
I mean, and there's no indication that will improve with the press in the near future. The press has really become almost irrelevant to American life. We used to depend on them to be the first line of defense, that they would blow the whistle if they saw something wrong. Well, it depends entirely on which side is that they're going for. But I think they've hurt themselves so badly that the traditional press or the legacy media, whatever they want to call it, I think has become very much sidelined because nobody really trusts them anymore.
Well, that's it. I mean, but all you got to do is look at their numbers.
Yes.
I mean, I saw the reports from last week or whatever of the audiences.
Mm-hmm.
And, a primetime audience, this is supposed to be prime time, right?
Yes.
Fox News, At 9 o'clock, I think it's Hannity. He's got about 2+ million. The lady, Collins, or whatever her name is, she's got like 600,000.
Yes.
And over MSNBC, another similar number like that. First of all, MSNBC is changing so many people that I don't even know who's on anymore. But as far as CNN, I mean, they're getting killed, and they've tried, I think, to improve their image. But I guess once you hurt your brand, it's kind of tough to do it, Bill.
Very, very hard to do, and especially the fact that they are the anti-Trump network. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I hate to be conspiratorial about it, but I will be. Nothing pleased CNN more than Trump's election, because they, without Donald Trump, where would they be? Every program on CNN, well, I shouldn't say every, many are so slanted against him and his administration. And there are times when they're almost unwatchable because of it.
Right,
And I think what happens with a company like that is they lose half their audience before they even go on the air.
right.
So
And
they
they
have
have no chance of getting it back because
no, no.
it's going to be very tough for them to get, like people who voted for, I mean, I don't watch them, Bill. I mean, just to be honest.
Yeah.
And I watch a little bit of Fox, but I've changed my viewing habits in the sense that what I do now is, instead of watching the TV, you can watch a lot of the clips on your iPhone. So you can catch most of the interviews on your iPhone because they run them on YouTube. They all have their YouTube channel, and you can see a lot of the interviews, so you don't have to watch the whole thing. But CNN is so bad. MSNBC is it's not even a television station. I mean, that is a circus. But my point is that they're losing audience, and eventually the people who sell advertising won't be happy with that, Bill.
Oh, absolutely. And now CNN apparently, because of CNN International, CNN apparently is still pretty well financed, and and they and their four viewers can go somewhere and put on a show.
Well, in the United, I mean, overseas, that they're in many places, they actually, like, they do Spanish, CNN Spanish. They have
Yes,
their own channel. So I
yes,
suppose, they've kind of become like a BBC alternative. But I just think that the media didn't do its job. The Democrats didn't do their job. Somebody in the administration, some Democrats should have stood up and said, "Hey, folks, this guy has a serious problem. We got to do
yes,
something about it."
yes.
But nobody did. And that's why I'm beginning to, I mean, I put the question on the table: is it time to change how the 25th Amendment is activated?
Yeah.
Because I cannot think of a more important time, Bill, to activate it than what we just went through.
Absolutely, but somebody has to blow the whistle, as you pointed out.
Yes, right.
Somebody has to say, "This man doesn't even know where he is." And if he gets that call at 3 o'clock in the morning, I think he might order a pizza. You know.
Or he may not wake up, and the first lady is going to be talking to the Secretary of Defense,
Yes.
and she's going to say, "Well, Joe cannot come to the phone, but tell me, what do you want me to say?"
Yes. Right.
Okay. I mean, and again, it's laughable. It's the kind of stuff that makes a comedy show, but it's not, it's serious when you consider nuclear weapons are at play.
Exactly. Exactly. And we talk about it for a couple of days, and then the issue fades away. Keeping an issue before the public is very hard, and nobody is really trying it.
Well, I will tell you this, though, Bill. If something were to happen to President Trump, and I say that, I'm not, I mean, I have to be careful how I say that because I always hate to talk in those terms. But let's say, God forbid, something happens to President Trump, he faints, something happened, whatever happens. I guarantee you they're all going to get pretty excited about all of a sudden what the 25th Amendment says.
Yeah. Yes, and also the Trump is only a part of the issue. The issue is that Vance would then become president of the United States, and there are people who feel that he is a great danger. That he's a religious conspirator, or he's this and is that, and even though we'd have the prettiest first lady in the world, but
Right.
it's
Right.
the they don't feel they know enough about him, and that he's involved with organizations that have religious designs on the United States. So it would never go smoothly.
No,
It
he'd
would
be a
definitely
controversial president. Let's put it that way.
very, very much right
Controversial.
from the beginning,
Yeah.
because the Democratic Party would immediately pounce on him.
Right. But you're right. He would have a very pretty wife, first lady. Not that we don't have one now, but I mean,
Yes, we do.
she would be a smash. And the other day, and I heard this the other day, that he would that if he's the nominee in 2028, it looks likely that he would be.
Yes,
That then he's going to put Rubio as vice president, which I think would make a lot of sense.
yes,
Uh, then, if you really want to see two pretty ladies on the top of the ticket, you have Mrs. Vance and Mrs. Rubio. You got two of the most beautiful
that's right.
ladies in North America. You would have a
That's
very pretty ticket. They'd be in every picture. I guarantee you
that's
that.
exactly right.
You know, it
They
would be.
they could go, they could go out on the road together, and advance their presidential husbands.
Yes, they'd be visiting a lot of schools. They'd be visiting a lot of places where they could help their husbands. But I will say, I mean, I am really pleased with Mrs. Vance.
Yeah, oh,
She is
she's
really
wonderful.
wonderful. She's really, I mean, I tell you, she's just an absolutely. I mean, Mrs. Trump is very,
Yes, of
but she
course.
seems to be more reserved, though. I mean,
Yeah. Oh,
she,
yes, very much so.
yeah, she's not doesn't seem to like publicity, but Mrs. Vance handles it very well and does a great job. But getting back to the husbands, it does seem to me like something has to be done to make sure that the next time something like this happens, and it probably will, God forbid, it probably will, that the 25th Amendment comes to life a lot quicker and much sooner. Because I think we lived in a very dangerous time with President Biden in the White House.
Oh, I think so, very much so. Not only his inability or instability or disability, but also the fact that his policies were just crushed by the left wing of his party.
Yeah.
I mean, most Americans don't go to bed at night thinking about trans track runners. They have family things to think about, and the Democratic Party never addressed it.
Right. They also apparently, according to the polls, they're not that interested in climate change either.
No, apparently not. Only under certain circumstances.
Right, right. When it gets hot, they think about climate change, or when there's an ice storm in New York City or something, they think
That's
about
right.
climate change, but they don't think about it too much. They seem to be a lot more concerned about basic things, you know, like safety and inflation and all of that kind of stuff. But one a lot of people are concerned about these tariffs, Bill, and we kind of jumped. I wanted to ask you this before when we spoke about the stock market. I am willing, okay, and I'm going to give President Trump a chance on what he's doing for the simple reason that he's getting countries to negotiate with him.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I've always, you know, I'm familiar with tariffs in two ways: the way President Trump is doing it, and when I had an opportunity to live and work in Mexico back in the 1980s, they were very protective of their industry. So, for example, when I lived in Mexico, the only television set you could buy would be one made in Mexico.
Yes.
The same thing with a refrigerator. Now, these were all American companies like Admiral and whatever making refrigerators, but they all had to be made in Mexico. You couldn't import them. And the consequence of that policy was that they were making very bad televisions because there was no competition.
Yes.
So the televisions that you would buy an Admiral, let's say, television in Mexico, it looked the same as the one in the United States, but the quality was night and day because the one in the United States had to compete with somebody else. The one in Mexico had to compete with another Mexican company, and they were both operating the same way. So I'm familiar with tariffs, or not tariffs, but protection of that kind.
Yes.
And I don't like that because I don't think it's good for anybody. But this here seems to me more of a trade policy to level the playing field, Bill.
Yes, and I think it's a policy that is quite popular in places where sophisticated Democrats don't go, like the factories of the former factories of the Midwest.
Right.
I mean, you know, they apparently thought the cars came down from heaven.
Right.
They didn't realize they were real. I mean, you take an organization like the UAW, the idea that the UAW, excuse me, is supporting a Republican president. If you said that 50 years ago, somebody would laugh at you.
Right. I mean, you worked in you mentioned before that you had worked in the Kennedy campaign in 1960,
Yes,
or that you had been involved in it.
yes.
Imagine if somebody had said to Kennedy, "We're not going to pay attention, or we don't care what the UAW people say."
Well,
He would have fired you from the staff, right?
you would never have gotten onto the staff. I mean,
Right.
that's or even survived. The Democratic Party today bears no resemblance to that party. John F. Kennedy couldn't get into the Democratic Party
Right,
today.
right.
He would be considered a right winger.
He would have. He would have. And I always remember, Bill, how the presidential campaign of the Democrat Party always started in Detroit or
At
Michigan.
one time, it was in Detroit, right after Labor Day. That was the official start of the Democratic campaign in Cadillac Square.
Right. And there's a reason for that. That's not a coincidence. That's because of Detroit and the auto business, right?
Detroit was known as Motor City,
Yeah.
and it was an enormous industrial base in the state of Michigan. That base is largely withered away, but it may come back because companies now may find it very profitable to build cars in America.
And I think that's a good thing. I mean,
Sure.
it's one thing to, people say, well, low wages, like textiles or making tennis shoes, maybe those will never come back. But to me, making automobiles should be a great job to have in the United States, Bill.
Well, yes. Look, we can still produce good jobs again, but it's going to take a lot of work, and we should have been really on top of this earlier instead of accepting these lectures by people like Barack Obama. Well, the world is changing, and they don't need our industrial base anymore. What we need is service industries, and we accepted it for a while. Now I think most Americans who are awake realize that was a completely ridiculous line.
It was that something has to be done to bring back that industry. I mean, for example, I'll just hold this in my hand right now, an iPhone. It's ridiculous that you cannot find an iPhone made in the United States, Bill.
That's exactly what they're all made in China.
Yeah.
And
So,
God knows what's in the circuitry.
well, yes, and I mean, it's just mind-boggling. I bought this little clock radio the other day, because I still like those. So I bought this little clock radio the other day, and I'm looking at the manual, and I'm curious. I said, where was this thing made? Made in China.
Yes.
Everything is made in China, or actually Vietnam has now become an alternative.
Yes,
I hear.
a big alternative. A lot of things I bought, you think are made in China are made in Vietnam.
Now, here's something else too I heard about China and this point you made about Vietnam, that they're using Vietnam as a way of getting around tariffs, because we have a different tariff policy with Vietnam than we would with China. So they make them in I mean, they're basically Chinese products. They just put "Made Vietnam" on them.
Yes.
And the other concern that I have, Bill, and Canadians also have this concern, is that China is using Mexico to get into the North American free trade, because they can build a plant go down there, build a plant made in Mexico, but it's really a Chinese way
Yes.
of getting into the United States. And what's interesting is that the premier of Ontario and the premier of Alberta have publicly said that we need to redo the North American Free Trade Agreement and basically do it between the United States and Canada, because they fear that Mexico is becoming nothing but a pass-through for the Chinese, Bill. That's another concern that I have about China.
I wouldn't want to be Secretary of the Treasury right now.
Well, he's got to negotiate with them, right?
Yes, he's got a killing job. He really does.
But I tell you, he's a very talented man.
Yes, he is. Very talented. The
I-
whole area over there at the Treasury Department is very well staffed.
Yes, every time I see it's Besant, right? Besant, Secretary Besant. Every time I see him on television, he is, first of all, he speaks very well. He can make a case very well. And I look at him and I say, if this is the guy giving the president advice, I'm going to bet on him.
Yes. I think that's a very good point. Apparently, he is well regarded around the world.
Yes. And has, I'm not sure where he came from. I think he came from one of these companies, equity companies or whatever. But the guy is really smart. I have to tell you, I really have to hand it to him. He really, Trump always has a way of speaking that, we've spoken about this before. Sometimes it can come across the wrong way, but Besant, it comes across exactly the right way, Bill.
Yes, he's elegant. He's elegant.
Yes.
He's right out of central casting.
He is. Yeah, if you were casting a Secretary of Treasury, he
Yep.
would be the one that you would be casting. Well, Bill, I thought about you yesterday because the Dodgers were in the White House. Now, these are not your Dodgers, I know.
No, these are the imposters.
Yeah, these are the imposters. But they went to the White House, and they had the usual visit to the White House that the World Series champs have. But they didn't do back. Do you remember anything like that when you were rooting for the Brooklyn Dodgers or the New York Giants or even the New York Yankees? I mean, they never went to the White House as far as I can recall.
I don't. That's a very good question. I don't remember when that tradition began. I do remember that it was common for a president to call the team or call the leading player just to congratulate him.
Right.
But making a special trip to the White House, I don't remember that. I do remember the wonderful line that was delivered by Babe Ruth when it was pointed out that his salary was higher than that of the president of the United States, and he said, "Well, I had a better year than he did."
Yeah, well, he was talking about Hoover, right?
Yes, that's right.
Well, I'm not sure when it began either. I mean, I think it's a fun tradition.
Yep.
I like it a lot, but it may have begun under Reagan, because I remember when Reagan was president that the Washington Redskins won the Super Bowl, and so he invited them to the White House. And there's a great video of the Redskins had this receiver, and the receiver went out for a pass, and Reagan from the microphone threw a perfect pass at the receiver. And it's a great video to watch. It may have begun with Reagan. So many of these things began with him, like
That's exactly right.
when he would recognize people in the audience and all of that. So maybe it began with him. I don't know, but it is a great tradition. And I was thinking about you. And how proud you would be of the team that you formerly used to root for.
That's exactly right. Exactly.
They have the same uniform, so at least they can make it feel that way.
Yes, true.
But they have the Japanese player, and I thought Trump was it was hilarious. Trump had him take a picture next to the Declaration of Independence.
Mm-hmm.
That was really fun.
Well, in the days when I was rooting for the Brooklyn Dodgers, you couldn't have a Japanese player. I mean,
it was too soon.
The guys on the team were fighting the Japanese 5 years earlier.
You would have had fights on the field, right?
Oh yeah, yes.
I mean, the poor Japanese player comes to bat and he knows where the ball is headed.
Right. Yes.
All right, Bill. As always, a great honor, a great pleasure to spend time with you, and we look forward to the next week.
We should look forward to the next week. I think we're going to have a very active week in front of us.
Well, Iran meets or talks to the president this weekend, so that could be our topic next week.
It probably will be.
Well, thank you, Bill. Have a great day.
Same to you, Silvio. Talk to you next week.
All right. Our good friend, Bill Katz, the editor of Urgent Agenda, talking about a lot of things, including the Dodgers going to the White House. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye, everybody.